Today I bring you a very special video about one of the most important events of World War II, D-Day. This military operation was carried out by the Allies on the coast of Normandy, France on June 6, 1944. It was a historic battle that changed the course of the war and marked the beginning of the liberation of Western Europe. In this video, I will present the 10 most important facts about D-Day, from the lesser known to the most relevant. Operation Overlord was the code name for the invasion of Normandy by American, British, and Canadian troops. It was one of the largest and most complex military operations in history, with over 156,000 soldiers landing on 5 different beaches on the coast of Normandy. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the supreme commander of Allied forces in Europe, was responsible for the planning and execution of the operation. The strategy included a simultaneous air and sea landing, the establishment of a foothold on the coast, and the gradual liberation of France. On the eve of the invasion, 3 airborne divisions from the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada were launched in a massive air transport operation. In total, 13,400 American paratroopers and about 7,000 British soldiers flew to Normandy aboard 1,200 C-47 Dakota aircraft, and they were the vanguard of the invasion. These airborne troops were responsible for securing the bridges and roads leading to the beaches, clearing enemy defenses, and preparing the terrain for the main landing. The German defenses on the Normandy coast were formidable. Hitler had ordered the construction of the Atlantic Wall, a continuous line of fortifications that extended from Norway to the Franco-Spanish border. The Atlantic Wall included reinforced concrete bunkers, machine gun towers, landmines, and anti-tank barriers. The Germans hoped to stop any Allied invasion with this impressive line of defense. The main landing began on June 6, 1944 at 6:30 a.m. on the 5 assigned beaches: Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juno, and Sword. Despite enemy defenses and dangerous obstacles, Allied troops were able to successfully land. The Omaha beach was the most difficult to conquer, with over 3,000 American soldiers killed or wounded. The other 4 landings were relatively easier, but they still had to overcome obstacles such as minefields and anti-tank obstacles. Heroes of D-Day. The battle on Omaha Beach was particularly bloody. An entire company of the United States Army, Company C of the 1st Battalion, 116th Infantry Regiment, was practically annihilated in a matter of minutes. All those who fell were posthumously awarded the Purple Heart Medal for their heroism in combat. In addition to the soldiers, there were many other heroes of D-Day. The pilots and crew members of the ships that transported the troops, the paratroopers who jumped behind enemy lines, the doctors and nurses who tended to the wounded, and the civilians who risked their lives to help the Allies, all contributed to the success of the operation. Racial segregation was prevalent in the U.S. Army during the early 1940s. Despite this, Black and African American soldiers played an important role in the operation, although they were mostly relegated to less glamorous jobs such as transporting supplies and installing barrier balloons. The Allies used a series of deception tactics to mislead the Germans and keep them in the dark about the invasion plans. Operation Fortitude was a massive disinformation operation that made the Germans believe that the main attack would be elsewhere. Smaller deception tactics were also used, such as using mannequins to make it seem like there were more troops than there actually were. Despite enemy defenses and deception tactics, the Germans were still surprised when the Allies launched the operation. The head of the Abwehr, the German intelligence agency, was convinced by a double agent named Juan Pujol, who worked for the British MI5, that the main attack would be in Calais. This belief delayed the German response and allowed the Allies to establish a beachhead in Normandy. The French resistance played an important role in the success of D-Day. Before and after the landing, the resistance sabotaged rail lines, telephone lines, and power stations, which prevented German reinforcements from reaching the front line. They also provided valuable information to the Allies about German defenses and helped hide Allied soldiers from enemy patrols. The Allies' two main objectives after the landing were the port city of Cherbourg and the city of Caen. Cherbourg was taken on June 30, 1944, after intense fighting, and Caen fell on July 20 after weeks of struggle. These victories allowed the Allies to secure their position in Normandy and advance into the interior of France. In conclusion, D-Day was one of the greatest military operations in history and a decisive moment in World War II. Despite German defenses, the Allies managed to establish a beachhead in Normandy and begin the liberation of France. The operation involved hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians and was carried out with a great deal of planning and sacrifice. Despite the victory, D-Day had a very high cost in terms of human lives. The casualties on the first day were approximately 10,000 soldiers, and the battle continued for weeks, causing more deaths and injuries. However, the legacy of D-Day remains significant. It was a decisive victory for the Allies and a milestone in the fight for freedom and democracy. It also had an important psychological impact on the war, as the Germans realized that the Allies were willing to risk a lot to achieve victory. D-Day was an important historical event that changed the course of World War II and left a lasting legacy in the military and political history of the world. If you like historical facts like I do, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Keep enjoying the following video. Let's go!